Beth, the version of you who walked into your first Breathe for Change training, that is not the version of you who is sitting here with us today.
I joined Breathe for Change really as an exit ticket. I didn't think that I had what it took to keep going with these kiddos.
She had unbelievably strong relationships with all of her kids. She knew a lot of times what those triggers were for those kids, and she was able to meet those needs without ever having to send them down to the office.
You found out, that you had cancer, and that precious moment when you had to share the news and how all of this came together. Would you mind just sharing that?
One of my little ones said, well, Mrs. Schreiber, can we do a wish circle for you? And she said, I think we should all give you a wish for your healing. And they did. Some of them were just wishing that I could see my own strength. I mean, these small people were just so wise.
Beth, I've known you for 4 years now, I think almost even 5. And the version of you who walked into your first Breathe for Change training, that is not the version of you who is sitting here with us today. And you came in, I remember, just completely burnt out. And what you've shared with me about those years and what I've witnessed in you since has honestly, Beth, changed how I think about what teacher leadership actually looks like, sounds like, and feels like in action. And your superintendent at Stevensville School District, John Konen, I know you noticed it too in her. And a few months ago, you wrote a book, and in it, you named Beth a super spreader, which I absolutely love. And then you did something that most superintendents just don't do. And I'm just so excited to dig into it with you both today. So Beth and John, thank you for being here. And John, I want to turn it to you. So what did you notice in Beth's second grade classroom that earned her that well-deserved super spreader label that you gave her in the book?
One of the strategies I use to get into classrooms in the mornings and getting to meet people and understand a little bit more about them, I always walk through Beth's room at the beginning. I wanted her to know right away from the very beginning that my main job as a servant leader is to what can I do to help support you? And so walking into her room each and every day and talking with her, learning more about her, it was very recognizable to me that there was more to this lady than meets the eye. And dealing with assistant principal and being the person who deals with tons of discipline, I noticed that I didn't get very many kids from her all the time. And so the more I got into her classroom, the more I realized that it's the culture of what she was doing within the classroom that helped support each and every one of those students. And I noticed that she had unbelievably strong relationships with all of her kids. And she knew a lot of times what those triggers were for those kids, and she was able to meet those needs without ever having to send them down to the office. And so I noticed that there's something else to her. And then the more I got into understanding her skill set and finding what drives her with her positivity all the time, I felt like, wow, this lady can really make an impact in a learning environment. And so once I noticed that, I'm like, we got to get her out and about and into a position where she connects with more and more people. And she has done an amazing job doing that.
Oh, I hear about it every single day, and I'm so excited to learn more from you, Beth, specifically about what are the specific things that you're doing with teachers and kids across your district now. But, the Beth that John just spoke to was not necessarily the same, positive, inspired, excited Beth that I first met 4 years ago when you came into the Breathe for Change training. I remember you're like, I literally don't know if I have one day left in education. And I would love to just kind of go back to that place, because I feel like so many educators can resonate with, oh, I'm so stressed, I'm burnt out, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And so take us back to where you were right before I met you And what was happening for you at that point, which obviously is completely different from where you are today?
Yeah, right. It's really a 180. I had hit a year. It was a tremendously challenging class. And more than just they were a tremendously challenging class, there was a high level of trauma history in many of them. There were some really interesting personality conflicts among some of the students, and they were just really playing off of each other in an antagonizing and negative way. And I found myself incapable of interrupting it and intervening. I found it tremendously draining. I couldn't find compassion. Like all of the things that I had come into education with as my tools had essentially been used up, is really the only way that I can put it. I started strong and it just each year got a little bit weaker. Those resources just weakened over time. And I think I just hit a point where I didn't have the access point to reach these kids with these heavier trauma histories. I could take a class that had all of those pieces, and that could regulate self and do all of that. And I could teach them beautifully. I had hit a point where I had these kiddos coming in and they weren't ready to learn. And I didn't have the tool set to get them ready to learn. And I had the Sunday Scaries every Sunday. I didn't want to get out of bed and go to work in the morning. I was struggling. And I joined Breathe for Change really as an exit ticket. I thought maybe if I can get into a yoga studio and teach in that capacity, then that could give me some semblance of a classroom back. But I didn't think that I had what it took to keep going with these kiddos. And it was heartbreaking. I mean, there was so much self-judgment and there was so much just tremendous heartache and disappointment in it because I didn't think it was healable. And then I started my track with Breathe for Change, and it just began to shift so quickly, really, because we started working on self first. And no one tells you in your job that that's where you have to start. I kept trying to fix the classroom and I couldn't, or the kids, right? There were these what I viewed as external problems stacking up against me, and they were getting harder every year. And I thought that meant I didn't have what it took to do it. But what I didn't realize was that really the only challenge I had to truly shift was internal. And once I was able to do that, then those external challenges, now that I've done that and I've practiced it and I've embodied it and I own it and I walk it, it's the challenges can come and I can manage them. And I know I have what I need to go back each day. And I didn't have it then.
Beth, I just want you to know that you are so not alone, right? I've been right there with you, burning out, stressed out. I know that teaching is the most burnt out profession in the United States of America, and teachers are roughly 2 times more likely than other working adults to report frequent job-related stress. I mean, literally over 75% of educators are reporting significant or moderate levels of stress every single day. So your story is just, it's one of way too many of us as educators. And you talked a little bit about, tapping into yourself. And I would love for you to go deeper so that John and everyone listening can understand what really changed for you through the training that you took at Breathe for Change and through the master's program. Like, when did you start actually having that click of like, oh, I have to start taking care of myself? And what tangibly did you start doing differently?
Before I even realized I had to start taking care of myself, I entered in that first Zoom class that first night thinking, okay, here I go. I'm going to go become a yoga instructor. And what happened instead was I was put into community with educators from all levels, from all across the country. And we were, one big collective, and then we were in these little breakout rooms with one another. And the shared experience was so raw and so vulnerable and so pained. Like there wasn't a single one of us in any of those rooms that wasn't deeply struggling. And it just, the validation that I walked away from that night that was my first step. That was the first inhale that I had been able to fully take in and then fully exhale. Maybe I'm not necessarily doing this wrong. Maybe I'm not necessarily bad at this or a problem. Maybe there's something else going on here. And it opened up the possibility where there was some evolution that could take place, where maybe there were some tools that could start helping, because clearly, if we were all having that shared experience, it's the institution, it's the structure of the entire thing that has to be adapted to. It's not each of us internally. So from there, we began the work of looking inward and doing that evaluation and finding where our own triggers were and, embodying the tools to notice the triggers and not react, right? And really maybe just responding or getting curious again about the self. I mean, I don't know how many times you all just encouraged curiosity. And that curiosity began to neutralize the judgment, right? You can't have both and hold them at the same time. And so the more we leaned into that curiosity, the more that judgment started to melt. And the more that judgment started to melt, now there's maybe possibility. And once that started to really blossom and flower inside of myself, even before I started bringing any of this into my classroom with my kids, my classroom has shifted already. Like it was already starting to move. All because, and I've learned long down the road through all of this training, they were already starting to co-regulate to me, right? They had always been co-regulating to me, but I was going in empty. They were now getting a teacher that had a little bit more to give. She was a little bit more present. Like she was just more available for them to truly engage with and connect with. And I was exhaling so they could exhale, and then the learning could happen. And it just grew from there.
John, I imagine that, you as the superintendent are thinking, what if I lost Beth? Aren't you? How glad are you that she had this kind of 180, as she called it? What is it like to listen to what her experience was like a few years ago?
It's difficult to listen to. This is my 28th year in education, and I've been a part of so many different stories where people have felt burnt out. Even my own wife, she's a high school special ed teacher, and it just is very taxing on a person. And knowing that when you come home, you carry so much of what happens during the day home with you, and it definitely affects your life. And there are people that sometimes have a hard time separating those two, so they can give back to their family. And I think that part scares me for especially young teachers coming into the profession. It scares me for teachers that have been here for a long time and have seen education change so much. And losing Beth is I don't want to talk about it. That it is, she has been an unbelievable a force in everything that we've done in our district. And so earlier when I talked about that super spreader piece, that she just has an effect on people and people want to be around her and has that positivity. And just like today in a meeting, she has no problem advocating and reframing a lot of our thinking about what's going on in the world, especially with our own little small microcosm here in Montana. And it helps me reflect and to push further thinking about what we can do to help spread this positivity, but also to help make sure that people are being held accountable. We know that in those best environments in education, there's a high level of accountability. People that know how to hold space for other people, but also be able to hold them accountable are hard to find. And Beth's one of those people that, man, I couldn't do it without her.
You're so loved, Beth, and extraordinary. And I would love,
That's very kind.
so sweet. I would love, Beth, for you to actually take us back to your classroom, right? You started to take care of yourself, to fill your cup back up. You felt more positive as you described it. And, you saw more possibility after taking the Breathe for Change training and starting to integrate a lot of these practices into your life in teaching. What was a day in Beth's class? Like, take us through what strategies were you using? What did you start to do differently as a result of your experience so that we can actually peel back, behind the scenes and understand what is it that you were doing that made such a big difference?
Initially it happened before I left my home. In Breathe for Change, one of the things that we talk about is kind of transitional activities, like really, really ending something meaningfully before beginning the next, like having that strong close. And so knowing it's time for me to leave home behind and go to work, allows me to keep that home time sacred and fully restorative. So it's held to that high account, right? Where nothing is going to evaporate from that necessary downtime. And then once in the classroom with my kiddos, we always began with a community circle every single morning. And things like 3 collective breaths, things like 2-word check-ins, things like weather reports, where everybody's coming in together and identifying, this is me and this is how I'm showing up here today, and alerting the community, this is how I'm showing up today. John does a similar thing in our admin meetings, where he does a fist to 5, right? Where we give a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of how are we showing up today, right? I did a similar thing. So we all know, like, who do we have to hold up today and who are we really going to depend on today? I did the same thing with littles, and it works beautifully, and so that not only am I getting a pulse on where are each of my kiddos, but they're holding space for each other, and what that does for their shared vulnerability and their shared safe community was tremendous. And I didn't actually see that coming either. I figured it would be a beautiful access point for me, but I didn't understand the true culture build it was going to do for them. And John just talked about accountability. That is another piece that translates. It really doesn't matter the community you're working for, right? Or working with. The little ones wanted to hold one another accountable and hold themselves accountable to that shared space too, because everybody felt better in it. So all of those kinds of things, starting the day, and then we would also end the day in a similar way. So again, a powerful start where we're really setting the intention, and then a powerful end where we're transitioning, closing, and moving to the next.
You just literally named 4 of my favorite practices that we teach in our Breathe for Change Masters program, which is 1, 3 collective breaths. I swear, if we just take moments throughout our day, whether it's with ourselves or our kids or our colleagues, and we just take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, and we do that 3 times collectively, it can fundamentally transform our experience of reality. We can go from a, sympathetic fight flight state of our nervous system kind of in this, anxious, overwhelmed state to a place of grounded and centeredness. Like, it's incredible. And then the 2-word check-in, right? Especially I find as educators and as leaders, it can be incredibly powerful to invite everyone in your community, whether it's your classroom or at a staff meeting, to take a moment, check in, notice how you feel, and then find 2 words that describe how you feel. And it takes no time to go around the room and say your 2 words. And then that's such incredible information and data that as educators and leaders, we can draw on to effectively respond to what is showing up in our space. If we hear, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I'm anxious, I'm tired, but we're still trying to teach that math or that science and just plow through, or I'm really sad, I'm depressed, or I'm excited, there's something really exciting going on. If we don't take those moments to check in and then respond effectively from that place, like, we're missing the whole point of what teaching and learning is all about, which is teaching to our students in the moment, like what is needed here right now. And that practice, the 2-word check-in or the weather report, right? Where a lot of us don't have words to describe our feelings because that takes emotional literacy. But we can say, wow, I feel sunny inside, or I feel like there's a thunderstorm going on right now. And that's like the first step, especially with the young kids or people who really struggle to find words to describe their emotions. The weather report is the perfect example. And yeah, I mean, it's so obvious, Beth and John, that the way both of you are leading your district together is, you both said accountability multiple times, and my brain goes straight to our practice of accountability buddies.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Why aren't most school systems set up in a way where we're all invited to hold ourselves and each other accountable to showing up as our greatest versions of ourselves? Nothing is more important than that. And that's what, Beth, you've been my accountability buddy, and I'm sure Beth and John, you've been each other's, and ensuring that your district is moving towards a direction that you want to take it. And I'm just curious, John, what's shifted in your experience of the district as a result of Beth taking this not just into her classroom with her second graders, but beyond the classroom in her role now as director of curriculum of the whole district? What have you seen?
Great question. It's really interesting because I had the same part of that position last year myself. And so getting some of the foundation started to get built, and then having Beth come into it, I have been pleasantly surprised with how much she's picked up and just taken off with it. And I have been quietly celebrating her all the time because it is hard work to do in our district. We're not big enough to have a dedicated curriculum director alone, and we have to do it with another job. She's got another job on top of that, and she has done an amazing job connecting with all people across our district. And we're kind of a unique school district where we have about 1,000 students all on one campus, 3 different buildings. And so in the past, there hasn't been very much connection between the curriculum director, who was housed in elementary, with the high school. And she's done an amazing job of connecting with both middle school and high school teachers. And so people are asking her to be a part of that. And so a lot of it also is the questioning that she uses, and she's amazing at using questions to be able to drive a direction where we're headed without telling someone what to do. And so it takes a unique person that knows how to do that, help make sure that people are moving forward and not getting stuck in old patterns and maybe not getting anything of the tasks at hand done. And so she's done an amazing job with that piece too. So want to applaud her for that. So she's definitely affected the whole district like that already, just in the 9 months that she's been in this position.
Well, and Ilana, I can tell you those questioning protocols that we did, I know exactly what John's talking about. And that is another foundational piece that I pulled directly from our Breathe for Change training. It's always very clear, directed, prompted questioning, right? And we're not giving answers, and we're not even giving directives, but we're prompting collective, creative conversations, but moving them in an intentional direction. So it's an invaluable professional tool at all levels.
It's bringing to mind for me our human intelligence framework that we've created at Breathe for Change, which has those 5 layers of intelligence, right? Somatic, the intelligence of the body; emotional, our intelligence of our emotions; cognitive, our ability to think; and then relational intelligence, our ability to connect, to cultivate belonging; and universal intelligence, this connection to something greater than ourselves, our purpose. But what you two are talking about is cognitive intelligence. And I think in our current education system and traditionally, it's almost cognitive overload. There's so much focus on the brain thinking, getting the right answer. but not questioning the questioner or prompting, courageous conversations where people can share different perspectives and expand their thinking, learn from one another. And I think that's what you're talking about. And especially in today's context with AI rapidly changing what teaching and learning is even going to look like, what thinking is going to look like, we have to teach people how to effectively question, because answers are at our fingertips in any second. Like, you can talk to an AI and you're going to get answers right away. But if we don't know how to ask questions and grapple deeply in the unknown space and that territory, and give people space to vulnerably share whatever it is that they're thinking through, struggling with, that's what remains uniquely human for us, that AI can't replace. And it sounds like, Beth, that's what you're doing for all the leaders and the educators and students in your community.
I don't think that there is anything more powerful in any community, but I think it's pivotal and so necessary in the world of education, because so many of us do struggle with compassion fatigue. So many of us do struggle with isolation between our own four classroom walls. I know our leaders can so often feel isolated in their jobs. Their communities get smaller because there are fewer of them, right? As you move into leadership positions. And so having these ways of reaching one another and not even necessarily having to have that responsibility of knowing the answer before you're going into that meeting, but knowing that you have a collective purpose where you can come in and collaborate together, being able to be comfortable and hold that space of maybe we don't know yet, but together I believe we can figure it out. I don't know that there is a better place for educators to exist.
I would agree. I've been doing a lot of research on Patrick Lencioni and organizational health, and how that plays out in our school systems. And I really believe that when he talks about how healthy a school is, or actually any work environment is how well they handle stress and problems. And you can definitely tell the health of an organization by digging into the decision-making process when there is a catastrophic event or a problem that happens, and how people help support and empathize to overcome the problem and work together. It shows how strong a school or a work environment really is. And so I know we have a long ways to work, Beth, in a system that you and I know so well, but I've been in a couple of those systems where we have some missing pieces, and we always fall down to what are systems that we have built, right? Whatever system it is that you have, that's what we fall back on. And if there isn't any systems there, then people tend to fight for power, and it can become very toxic environment. And so I think that's another piece that you and I feel like have been working a lot with is like building systems. Like, what's a system for decision making? How do we meet? How do we show up? How do we set expectations when we meet together? What's the final outcome or goal that we're looking for? And so when we fall back on some of these protocols and systems routinely, then I feel people understand, how we're going to communicate with each other. And we got to hold each other accountable to that, because when stuff goes awry, like you and I were in a meeting not too long ago where I feel like both of us wanted to be able to restart the meeting or do something else in the meeting because it was just hard to sit and listen to. So,
and tell me more about some of the systems that the two of you have created to, up level, so to speak, the culture and the climate of your whole district. So what are you two doing differently as opposed to before?
Oh, that's such a good question. John has been just a really unique leader. Mostly, we talk about human intelligence all the time, right? That's what we're trying to give all of our teachers as much of a foundation in this as they can. John has a unique ability when it comes to generalized, balanced human intelligence. It's not something you often see in leaders today, which is sad. And I think one of the things that he does is he leads vulnerably. And in that vulnerability, he is not ashamed and in fact quite proud to say, I'm not making this decision on my own. This is going to be a teaming decision. Therefore, he has protocols and setups in place for us as his admin team to come together and do this together. It's like, it is not a top-down structure. It is a collective communal structure. And so it's that relational intelligence is keenly woven into all of our decision-making processes, and nothing is ever complete. Everything always gets to remain flexible and fluid. Like, it's not necessarily a definitive answer that gets set in stone. Like, he allows that curiosity to remain all of the time as well and encourages it and says, if we can find something here, he's always looking for what can we improve, right? And so we're always able to up-level whatever it is we're attempting to address. I think another thing that he has brought in, and I'll let him talk to you more about that PLC Plus process. That's been really good because it collaborates in everywhere around our school. Like, there's no group that is silenced, right? Everyone has a voice. Everyone is an expert in their own field and gets to come to the table. And so those are some of the things I think since John's leadership has come in that have been truly profound. And he remains very visible and approachable. And I'm noticing now too, our other leaders are doing the same, which collectively for culture, I think is phenomenal. The more our teachers can feel that support and see that support in their buildings, in their day to day. And they know, I mean, I am talking like our early preschool teachers, right? They can grab John in the hallway with those littles and be like, I need you for 5 minutes. And John will grab that classroom and he will hold that sacred space, and the kids will love him while this happens, you know? So that when he talks about that servant leadership, it really is his leadership style. And it is because of that delineating down to really all of us. And that's clear and obvious in all of our protocols and procedures.
That's amazing, John. Yeah. And, you know,
Thank you. Thank you, Beth.
I wish that more superintendents would just walk into the preschool classrooms and be able to show up for the kids the way that they show up for the educators and everyone that they're ultimately directly responsible for. What a way to just stay in the heart of the role. And I think that really showcases that, you know, when you have those moments of human connection with students, with your colleagues, with your community members, they feel seen, valued, supported, and they trust more deeply. I belong here. And that's really the access point for teaching and learning.
I still think we have a long ways to go too. Like we've got some of these foundations and systems. As we know with anything with culture, you got to continue to keep building it. And it can't just be dictated. Culture can't be dictated from the top down. It's built by every single person on campus. And I've been trying to hit that forever. Unfortunately, in a lot of districts I've been in, sometimes the problems that they have had in their district are perpetuated forward, and they get shoved in a closet. And so the next time there is a big event that happens, or a situation or a crisis, all that stuff in the closet comes back out again, and you got to deal with all of it. And all of a sudden now, we're not just dealing with what's in front of us, but we're dealing with the 3 or 4 skeletons that never got dealt with before. And so some of this trauma that happens in schools with the staff never gets healed. And so and it takes a long time to kind of dig into that. And I feel like in our work that we're doing in our district right now, we have started to open those doors and to be able to work on healing some of those wounds that they've had from years past, and hard conversations. And I'm a huge Brene Brown fan, and read everything she pushes out, but that whole leaning in aspect to some of this hard work is like how to have hard conversations and how to lean into those difficult conversations where we can be honest and yet uplifting and helping, trying to paint the picture for what it could be going down the road and how to heal that stuff. I'm a huge fan of circle work and restorative practices. And so when Beth talked about her circle work that she does, it's just something in society that's been going on for ages, is like circle work. Every type of society has had some type of communication where they get around in a circle and do it and set protocols for, what we do when we get into that circle. I think that's very powerful. I think that's a piece where I would love to bring that restorative practices back more into our school, but also starting with our staff, because I think there's still more healing that can be done as we go forward, and we're only going to get better if we can address some of that stuff that's been not addressed before. And so I know that's in every type of work system and every type of school, but it takes people that are not afraid to dig into that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that try to avoid any type of conflict. And so there's a fine balance with everyone's cup, how full it can get when they go to address these things. And so I feel like you got to find other people like Beth and some of the other people in our district that are not afraid to have those hard conversations, lean in, and want a better work environment, want better relationships. So thank you to Beth, right? I mean, and people like that.
One of the things, so our elementary administrators invited me in at the very beginning of the year to do some professional development with every single one of our PLCs. And we went around and I did a little mini nonviolent communication training, which is yet another gift that Breathe for Change has given to me. We handed out the scripts. We handed out the vocabulary list. I mean, the inventories of both feelings and needs and values. And we taught them how to use this, and they introduced it and said that we would like you to start using this for your conflict resolution strategies this year. And then, the year went on and we had to readdress it. There were some things that had come up. And so we did it again and we rotated around in all of the PLCs. And I said, okay, you have the digital copy. I give you a hard copy at the beginning of the year. Who needs another copy? And lo and behold, it's so funny. Just this morning, my elementary special ed teacher came to me and said, you would be so proud of me. I had a tremendously hard conversation yesterday and I used nonviolent communication. And I said, how did it go? And she goes, Beth, it was so connective. It brought us right back to the page. There was no storytelling. There was no defensiveness. It was just immediate reconnection and repair. And so things like that, if we can empower our educators who don't have a lot of time in their days to have these kinds of hard conversations with one another, this is a phenomenal tool, again, that we can utilize, that hopefully next year we'll be able to bring district-wide beyond where we are using it in our elementary, because it's been finally, it takes some time. We have to, when we're moving large pieces, right, we have to trust the process and trust that over time it will take, but clearly it's starting to get a little bit of traction. So that one's really exciting too.
And for those of you who are listening and you're like, what's nonviolent communication or what's this peace process? That's what we call it at Breathe for Change. It's this simple 4-step process where the first step is observations, the second step is feelings, the third is needs, and the fourth is requests. In that first step, if a challenge happened, you state just the facts of what happened. And I would argue you do it in one sentence or less, or else you're getting into the story and opinion and judgments are getting thrown in there. So you state what happened in just one sentence. And then you say, I felt or I feel. And then you state in 1, 2, or 3 words how you felt or you currently are still feeling about that situation. And then you go to the needs, because of my need for, or because I value, and you actually take responsibility for what your needs are, which so often, especially as educators who are constantly supporting everyone else's needs but their own, this was always the hardest part for me, is like, I have needs too. Wait, I actually needed some affirmation, or I needed support, or I needed communication. And then you state and own what your needs are. And then you make that request. So would you be willing to? And you can request whatever it is that you want, and whoever it is that you are making the request to, they have the freedom and flexibility to answer yes, no. Maybe it opens up a really great conversation that allows you to go deeper in the relationship. But this kind of tool of nonviolent communication is extraordinary. And I would argue any age student or adult can access it. When I was a pre-K teacher, I created a peace corner, and I would teach my students this 4-step, what I called the peace process for them. And so the beginning of the year, they're tattling to me every single day, Miss Ilana, this person took my teddy bear. Miss Ilana, that person hit me, and I'm like, okay, how do I address this? So I started modeling this 4-step process. When you took my teddy bear, I felt sad because of my need for love. So would you be willing to give me my teddy bear back? Right? And the model. And then eventually I never heard any tattling anymore at all. It was like they just went to the peace corner and solved their own problems. And so that kind of a practice can change the culture of an entire classroom, an entire staff, which ultimately leads to an entire school. And if you're teaching like at both your levels, district-wide, we're talking about an entire district using a similar process to effectively communicate in an honest and nonviolent way. That's game-changing for culture. And I'm curious, what are some other ways in which y'all are integrating these kinds of practices or strategies into the whole district that's starting to shift the way people are interacting together?
Sure. I think one thing that picked up just I guess it was last year, but I started using it first with our school board, and then we've used it with our rest of our school district too. And I know some of our high school teachers are using it with kids in class. So I don't know if you've heard of the Dignity Index. The Dignity Index is out of Utah, and it was first put in place as a way for people to score legislators in the Utah legislature for when they would debate topics. They noticed that it was getting very toxic in the way people were talking to each other in the legislature. So they developed a rubric, 1 to 8 rubric of how and scored the people that were talking. And in this rubric, you have 8 is the top, and that's where you have total empathy, understand, and can put yourself in someone else's shoes, and you hold space and listen, and complete respect, right? Well, the opposite of that is a level 1, where it's complete contempt, and that is where people hate each other, use hate language, where some of the most vile types of comments, unfortunately, that we probably hear nightly on the nightly news, right, are happening right now. When they put this in place, they realized that there was a whole other level to this than just scoring someone else. They felt like this could be self-score, right? And how...
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. Starts with the self.
How you could go into conversations and use that, have that rubric next to you. So what I did was last summer when I took this job as superintendent, I taught this to our school board members, and then I brought it into some of our elementary last year actually too, and used it. And on their website called dignityindex.com, it has tons of information on how workplaces can use this, as well as education, students and classrooms. One of the cool things I liked about it is that a famous speech would pops up every day, and you get to score it 1 through 8 using this rubric, and you don't know who said the words, which is really cool because you know it's a famous quote from somewhere in history, right? Or maybe in something that is pretty popular that you should have read or known about, and then you score it, and then it tells you who the person was that said it. And so it is amazing to use it as a reflective tool, but also to help model and possibly reframe conversations that you get into. And so that's one thing that we've kind of pushed out and talked a lot about. I know a lot of it could connect to Breathe for Change as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally. It's, all these types of practices that allow us to take moments for self-reflection, to ask the question, like, who am I? How am I showing up for myself? How am I showing up for my students? How am I showing up for my colleagues, my loved ones, my community? There's all these different types of strategies, but it's really just the act of that reflection and doing the work of being self-aware. And it's in that awareness that we can recognize, oh, wow, I'm showing up in this way that that's not really serving me, or that's not supporting the situation, or that's not contributing in a positive way to this relationship that I actually care about, that I want to sustain. So how can I do something differently? How can we do something differently together? And so all of these practices, the thousands that we teach in our master's program at Breathe for Change, like that Beth is integrating into her life and teaching. And then all these other practices that experts have created for thousands of years, right? They're all just different flavors of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that
Absolutely.
looking inward so that we can show up more effectively outward.
Right. And who it connects with. Because sometimes, just like students in a classroom, we may teach a concept one way and may use a different resource or teach it a different way, and we connect with them. And so I think one of the things that we need to continue to work on is having that big toolbox so we can pull that out, because at different times, different tools work. I can tell you some of the things that worked 10 years ago and after COVID don't work now, and vice versa. There's some things that we keep pushing that aren't a very strong indicator of student success, and we need to go back to some of the things that did in the past. And so I agree. There's parts of these systems, and creating a toolbox to help support you is important as we move forward.
And as we embody these different practices ourselves, our students start to pick up on them, and then they start living and breathing them too. And it's how we teach these like emotional and social and relational skills that are so critically important for our students to effectively teach and learn. And Beth, several times in this conversation, I keep going back to a year ago when you were in like one of the most vulnerable places of your life, and you found out, that you had cancer. And I'll never forget the story that you told me of like that precious moment when you had to share the news and how all of this came together. Would you mind just...
Oh yeah,
I
forgive tears if they come. This is it is a beautiful story. So it was a challenging time. Clearly, I mean, anytime you're fighting something that frightening, it's challenging. But more than that too, I knew it was my last year in the classroom. I had already accepted this new position that John had created, and I was ready to move. And I was going to be walking away from my kiddos for chunks of time to do treatments. And it was hard. So I was having a lot of emotion, and I didn't want to scare them. And so I actually invited our school counselor in. We did our regular circle time, but I let him know I want extra support there because I don't know how much space I'm going to be able to hold here. And I shared with them what was happening and let them know it was all going to be okay. There's a plan. These doctors are so smart. I'm in very safe hands. All the things we do as adults, right, with our littles. And we got to the end of it, and I asked if there were any questions, and there were a couple, but really the one that sparked at the end was one of my little ones said, well, Mrs. Schreiber, can we do a wish circle for you? Because we had done compliment circles. We had done, accolade circles. We'd done all of these things where we were recognizing one another. And we had never done a wish circle. So I said, what do you mean by a wish circle? And she said, I think we should all give you a wish for your healing, for what you're going to go and do. And they did. And it came from them because we had practiced these things all year, and they wished things like, healing and things like that too. But some of them were just wishing that I could see my own strength. I mean, these small people were just so wise. And the only thing I can attribute that to was the collective consciousness that we had created together. We left the circle, we sent them off for the day, and my school counselor, who is one of the most talented, I guarantee to you, on the planet, has one state school counselor, like he went at a state level, went and got to meet the president, did the whole thing, said to me, I have never experienced, nor would I ever have imagined I could have experienced a classroom environment like that in my entire existence. Like, it would just blew him away. So, I can say, like, it got to the point full circle for me at the end where it was so rooted in truth for me that this is where it is. This is where the reality of education has to sit. They have to be the ones where they are then carrying that culture forward. And, now I'm watching them in their third grade classes this year, and those teachers are doing similar things. And it's just the kids, they're carrying it with them. And I can't wait to see down the road where these little leaders lead us, because they've already started building those toolboxes. They don't have to wait till they're 50 like me. They're already building those toolboxes.
Beth, it's just so profoundly beautiful and speaks to the level of care and connectedness that you bring to each and every one of your students as a teacher. And I know that everyone who's listening, who is in the classroom, you're doing the same thing every single day. And every moment that you create, just like you did, Beth, it's like whether you were leading, we have so many of these types of strategies, an appreciation circle at the end of your school day, or the shower of acknowledgement, where one student goes to the front and everyone's showering them with acknowledgement, or maybe it's a peer cheer. You're creating this attitude of gratitude through the way that you facilitate learning. That culture building, that translates not only to how you teach, but how then students literally carry on with their lives. They led you through that process that you taught them. And so the students become the teacher.
Yeah, they were able to take what otherwise could have been a very traumatizing moment. Had they not had that tool set, that could have been added trauma, but they turned it into an access point to create safety for themselves and for me. When we look at them and we feel like we're the ones that always have to do the co-regulating, that is not what happened here. They really can be empowered to be those makers of change and those healers of trauma. And these are 7-year-olds.
So beautiful. So a theme that I'm pulling through in this conversation is just the power of turning inward like filling up your own cup, being aware of what's going on inside you. And then from that place of awareness, being able to like show up and create that container for the students in your classroom, for the colleagues that you support, for the educators, the families, the community members in your sphere of influence. And so, we started talking about how big of an issue teacher stress and burnout is. And I know that's applied, John, to administrators as well, just educators. And so, for all of those educators and leaders who are listening, and many of whom are at the end of their rope too, just like you were, Beth, a few years ago, what's the first thing that you would tell them?
I would say you're not doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. These are not skill sets that are given to us, that are handed to us in our preparation programs. They just aren't. And society at large is not necessarily encouraging these practices. And yet they are simple. There doesn't have to be a lot of investment. It just has to be an investment. And we do truly have to put our own oxygen masks on first. And that it doesn't take very long. Once you start really reinvesting in self, that is not a selfish act. It is truly in the service of the collective. And it can really reap rewards quite quickly when done with regular practice. And you are deserving, you are necessary, and we need you to do this beautiful self-care in order to continue moving forward so that we can all survive in the long run.
And Beth, I'll add one thing, which is the word yet. Teacher education has not focused on this yet and that's why Breathe for Change exists, is we're completely transforming that. It has to change. And,
yes.
In our masters, that's literally all we focus on. It's like, the human side of teaching and living and learning is what matters. And that's the foundation of education. So Beth, I'm so honored to be just partners in crime with you in building this for educators, and can't wait to continue. And John, what do you have to say to the educators listening? Yeah.
I mean, Beth said it so eloquently with taking care of yourself, right? That is a hard concept to understand. The more you give yourself, the more you can give others, right? But I think one of the things I would love to continue to build with new teachers or anyone trying to get into education is to be curious, but to have a growth mindset. I feel like we get a lot of people that have been in education for a little while that have a fixed mindset, and they have a hard time finding the positives in others. And so unfortunately, that's just as contagious, having a fixed mindset, as it is of having a growth mindset. So having that growth mindset to always be curious and wanting to learn more is important. And if you're going to be in education, you have to understand that we need to be continually learning and not being afraid to be vulnerable and humble, and not knowing that we have the answer, but knowing that I am going to find someone that maybe has an answer, or I'm going to go learn something new to put in place. We're going to continue to keep having students that have initials that we have never heard of before after their name, and we're going to have new situations, and all of our old tricks aren't going to work. And so we're going to have to keep that toolbox open to put more tools in, and continue to have empathy and learning and being curious about the colleagues and the students that are in front of us.
And if there's one thing I've learned from this conversation, it's that when you do that kind of work, you show up for yourself, and then you're able to have the capacity to be fully present for those around you. That's when you literally have the energy, the capacity to be that super spreader, because you create such ripple effects.
Definitely.
Like every interaction that you have can have the power to change someone's life. And Beth, you're a perfect example of someone who just continues to show up in that way with positive energy and love and compassion and care to everyone within the context of your classroom, your district, and the ripple effects are real, as John, has so powerfully revealed to us. So thank you both so much for this conversation. I'm leaving feeling really hopeful about the future of education, knowing that people like you are in leadership, changing the way that we teach, that we learn, and that we lead. And that's really what I feel is my mission. And it feels like a shared mission for all three of us. And I'm so excited to see what the two of you can continue to do for everyone whose lives you touch every day. So thanks so much. This is so beautiful.
Thanks, you.
Ilana.
Talk soon.